and welcome to AMV News.
This is not your average news. This is news where you learn about how to look at a social movement organization through a sociological lens.
Today we'll be discussing the importance of having diverse people in a social movement organization like Planned Parenthood. First, we will look at the leaders in this organization. Second, we will discuss the different approaches used by extremist groups and politicians to target Planned Parenthood and how the controversy always comes back to abortion. Lastly, we will be talking about how Planned Parenthood has used different forms of media and how the media has impacted its role in social movements. Let's get started on the first topic. In the past 100 years, the two most prominent groups that have been involved in Planned Parenthood have been the African American community and the religious community. These two groups were crucial in the development of this organization because they both had different social network ties and allowed both inside and outside leaders to take part in this social movement organization. Vanessa, can you tell us a little more about the African American group?
Yeah, definitely. The motivation behind the African American community to get involved in Planned Parenthood was one more step in their fight against racism, sexism, and overall equality. Some of these leaders were already part of the pre-existing formal organization like the NAACP, which was associated with the Civil Rights Movement. This made it easier for other social network ties to be made because they had connections to other leaders and other organizations. According to Gasper, one's ideas and attitudes are influenced by social network ties, and scholars have emphasized how recruitment to movements happen through network ties. Civil rights activists who had shown support for Planned Parenthood inspired the African American Women for Reproductive Freedom organization to form in 1990. This organization molded the two movements together to provide a sense of inclusivity and solidarity in talking about reproductive rights. Taking a look at the reasons why the African American community supported Planned Parenthood helps us understand what inspired the religious community to take part in Planned Parenthood's activism.
Interesting you say that, because the religious community's motivation to get involved in Planned Parenthood was to show that there were more than one way to be a person of faith. They believed that Planned Parenthood's values were not different from their own, but wanting people to have more access to health care, contraception, and education. The religious group welcomed people from all walks of faith and believed individuals should not be judged for their choices. According to Kuravia, people of faith were coming together to show compassion to oppressed groups like those seeking access from Planned Parenthood. This religious community supported the cause Planned Parenthood was fighting for, which was equal rights for all. Now that we've seen the two different motivating factors that the African American group and the religious group had, it is important to understand that they had different kinds of leaders too.
Yes, Arlene. And African American women were not only leaders from other pre-existing organizations like the Urban League and the League of Women Voters, but they were seen as what is known as the insiders of the group. What I mean by this is that women were standing and fighting for the rights of other women. For example, Dr. Thelma Patton Law, who was one of the first black OBGYNs in Texas. During her 25-year tenure, she worked at a public community clinic that served poor black women and children. She also used her various board memberships to lobby for stronger health care for Houston blacks. Then, there was Faye Waddleton, who became the first woman of color to be appointed president of Planned Parenthood. By the time she left Planned Parenthood, she tied the organization to 170 affiliates in 49 states and operated more than 800 health centers. Also, Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, who was the first pioneer as president of Planned Parenthood. She risked her life, jail time, and reputation to be the face of Planned Parenthood. This goes to show that not only were women of color the main leaders, but other women took highly respected positions as well. Now that I've mentioned the inside leaders, can you tell me about the outside leaders?
Yeah, well, the outside leaders in this case were men, who still played a crucial role in leading Planned Parenthood too. Reverend Howard R. Moody, minister of the Judson Memorial Church, and Reverend Tom Davis, an ordained minister from the United Church of Christ, were both part of the religious community. These two men started a national underground network that consisted of 1,400 clergy members to help women get birth control, which spread awareness about the morality of advocating for reproductive health. While the female leaders were understanding of other women, Men, like Reverend Howard and Reverend Tom, supported women by gaining access to resources. According to Goodwin and Gasper, although members of challenging groups usually provide the majority of leaders for their movement, it is not usual for members of privileged outside groups to function in leadership positions within movements of oppressed groups.
Yeah, I think we should note the importance of having diverse groups in an SMO. Since men were seen as a privileged group compared to women, this benefited Planned Parenthood as they had access to more leadership positions outside the organization, which women did not. Not only did men have access to other resources, but they were able to bring new ideas on how to advocate for Planned Parenthood. According to Goodwin and Gasper, social movement leaders drawn from outside of the challenging group are valuable because they may be anchored in social networks otherwise unavailable to the challenging group. And they often bring fresh insights and analysis to the table from cultural sources outside the movement. However, the women were just as valuable. As I mentioned before, women understood other women.
Yeah, I think overall the leaders in Planned Parenthood were able to take part in important movements due to their diverse leadership. According to Goodwin and Gasper, movements led by leadership teams comprising both insider and outsiders have the greatest chances of success. Both insiders and outsiders, like the African American women, along with men in religious organizations, allowed Planned Parenthood to be successful. Both groups were equally important in the accomplishments Planned Parenthood has had throughout their 100 years as an organization. Now we are going to start discussing our second topic, which includes how Planned Parenthood gets criticized for offering abortion and the organization's response to that criticism. Extremist groups frame Planned Parenthood as a social movement organization that kills innocent lives, while politicians frame Planned Parenthood as a waste of money. Therefore, Planned Parenthood tries to create their own frame to show that they are not what the critics say. To understand this process a little bit better, it is easier to think of framing and counterframing as revolving doors, or an ongoing process that is dynamic and always evolving.
With that being said, we will begin by focusing on the extremist groups which have targeted Planned Parenthood for many years and have framed the organization as murderers of unborn babies. They have created edited, deceptive, and misleading doctored videos with the intent to turn the public against Planned Parenthood in order to defund it. David Dalton, one of the anti-abortion activists, broke a confidentiality agreement he signed when he entered Planned Parenthood abortion meetings. He used tiny cameras to record inside the organization and bribed abortion providers with alcohol and fancy dinners in order to say Planned Parenthood was selling fetus parts. According to Hamilton, this led to controversy over Planned Parenthood services because it caused a flood of hate speech, threats, and violence against abortion providers. Not only did this extremist group know about these false videos, but 2 Republican congressmen knew about the video before it was released to the public. They did not try to stop the media from spreading the videos because they knew it could benefit them in their fight against Planned Parenthood. By releasing this video, extremist groups knew it would cause harm to Planned Parenthood's frame of providing equal access healthcare to all and ignite anti-abortion supporters to join them in their shared meaning of pro-life. The way this extremist group attacked Planned Parenthood captured the attention of Republican congressmen because they knew that in doing so, they could garner the mainstream public into believing and supporting the murder of unborn babies frame.
Of course, Planned Parenthood had to react to the frame of the extremist group by highlighting that they offered other healthcare services besides just abortion. This organization tried to explain that women were going to be prevented from receiving all other healthcare services that they needed and deserved if it was shut down. According to Planned Parenthood, 2.4 million women would be affected by the defunding of them, and it would prevent the organization from delivering other services like birth control, STD screenings, and life-saving cancer screenings that are crucial to women's healthcare. President Cecile Richards shut down the rumors of Planned Parenthood selling fetus parts by stating that they abide by the law and donate them with the consent of the mother. Richards also mentioned that abortions were legal in the United States and women should not be harassed for using a service that is in their legal right to use. According to Hamilton, she said, "Harassing doctors and their families do not reflect American values and the rule of law. Planned Parenthood used the law to mobilize their supporters, both adherents and constituents. Overall, Planned Parenthood was being tainted as an organization that kills fetuses, but they emphasized that they are more than just an abortion clinic by providing other services to women. However, the organization will have to face a new criticism as Republicans joined the extremist group's fight against Planned Parenthood. Vanessa, what do you have to say about that?
Yes, many Republicans began to state that defunding Planned Parenthood would redirect taxpayer money into other government spending. It is crucial to understand that the anti-abortion activists made these videos because they wanted politicians to use them. Both the anti-abortion activists and the politicians sought to get rid of Planned Parenthood, although anti-abortion activists and politicians' motives were slightly different. The activists did not support abortion, and the politicians' main focus was to defund Planned Parenthood, although they still did not agree with abortion. President Donald Trump, a Republican himself, is amongst those that want to defund Planned Parenthood. However, he cannot defund Planned Parenthood without passing legislation that would significantly impact the country's annual revenue. Since that money is coming from Medicaid disbursements and the rest of it is coming from Title X, he suggested a plan to separate Title X services and providers that perform abortions. Donald Trump knows that Planned Parenthood is the largest abortion provider, which receives more than $450 million annually in federal funding. Therefore, he is willing to continue a political battle to achieve the defunding of Planned Parenthood by framing them as an organization that focuses on mainly abortions, meanwhile trying to pass new legislation.
Once again, Planned Parenthood felt they needed to defend themselves, but this time, mainly against Republicans who were agreeing with Donald Trump, as Vanessa just explained. Naomi Amberly, chair of Planned Parenthood, publicly addressed that as an organization, they do not use tax dollars to fund abortions. Since 1976, the Hyde Amendment has prohibited the federal government from using their money towards abortions. Abortions are paid through Medicaid, the government-funded health insurance for low-income people. It is an interchanging system where Medicaid gets reimbursed from the government for their services, and then Medicaid, state agency, gets refunded by the government for the cost. There is no direct federal money going towards Planned Parenthood. Politicians are preventing Medicaid patients from receiving birth control and cancer screenings, not only abortions. It was important for the organization to note that most of these Medicaid recipients include people of color, have low income, and live in rural communities. Planned Parenthood tries to prove once again that they not only offer different healthcare services, but they provide these services to those who need it most and do not have equal access to them. Planned Parenthood also states that they save the government over $13 billion in a year. Although Planned Parenthood defended itself again, new criticism might continue to arise, but we don't know for sure.
As we just discussed, there is this ongoing controversy and Planned Parenthood tries to defend itself. It is very important to point out that my co-anchor Arlene mentioned two different women who had to advocate for Planned Parenthood. Both Cecile Richards and Naomi Amberly are at the forefront of Planned Parenthood, yet they are actively involved differently. Naomi Amberly is more politically inclined than Cecile Richards. She is a political activist and civic volunteer who focuses her efforts on women's health. Naomi has been involved in progressive politics, policy making, and fundraising at the state and federal levels for the past 15 years, while Cecile began her career organizing low-wage workers in the hotel, healthcare, and janitorial industries throughout California, Louisiana, and Texas. Ms. Richards is a frequent speaker and commentator on issues related to women's rights, reproductive health, and sex education. These two women being so diverse has allowed Planned Parenthood to reach different audiences and reach their goals successfully.
So far, it seems as if diverse people are a crucial part in Planned Parenthood, but we will see in just a little bit if that's still the case as we discuss how this social movement organization and the media interact. We will now start discussing our third topic, and we will look at different forms of media Planned Parenthood has been involved in and the diverse people it took to gain supporters.